What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to show you how to use the new Autel At100 Superchip for transponder cloning with car keys. Now we have our Autel KM100 for today's demonstration. However, you can use the IM series with the XP200 or 400. We have our original key. Now this is a Honda Valet key, so I'm also going to demonstrate this with a X-Horse universal remote that is also for the same Honda. Now the reason I'm going to do that is because these AT100 chips are very intuitive. We can clone the original key itself, or we can clone a cloned key, which I have right here. Now I'm going to try to zoom in to show you here just to know you're using the right chip. These do say AT100 on it, so you don't get them mixed up with the X-Horse or other transponders. Now what we also have is a empty shell that we're going to put this in for the demonstration. We've already cut the key to save some time. So let's get started. We're on our KM100 main menu here. We're going to go to our reading and cloning option. I'm going to take off the chip just because that's the receptacle area. You don't want it getting mixed up in the readings. So I'll show you what I mean by this. Here's the original. We'll go to reading, which is down here. All right, there we go. We got our chip data 936A and then our ID 46 locked, and it's clonable. So I'm going to bring over to our X-Horse key. We'll do the same thing. We're going to just go ahead and hit reading. (936A) ID 46 locked and clonable. So now that we're ready to clone a key, we're going to keep that in our antenna ring. We're going to go ahead and hit clone. Now we're going to have to do 46 password calculation. We'll go ahead and do that. And what it's asking here is to make sure you're connected to the network. Got the Wi-Fi there. Original key in the key slot, like we have here. We're going to go ahead and hit start for reading.
Reading successful. Please continue.
So it did give a little message there. It's read successfully, but this is going to mean the chip data like we saw on the previous screen. Next, we're going to have to acquire the data. It's going to give us very specific instructions here that we'll have to go out to the vehicle for. So we'll go ahead and place the device, the KM100 with the antenna here, close to the ignition coil, and we'll turn the ignition on with the original key so we can acquire the data. Now I'm going to go out to the vehicle and we'll pick up this video once I'm there. Alright, so we're at the vehicle now. Just to clarify where we're at, this might time out, but that's okay. We're going to be taking our working car key. We're going to go to our ignition and we're going to insert that key. And then we are going to take our KM100. This is our antenna to read the data. It's going to ask us to put that close to the ignition, cycle the key on like so, and then it will hopefully collect the data. Now I don't have 4 hands, so this will be tough to demonstrate, but this is where you're going to want to keep it. Our chip in the car key, our transponder, is going to send that signal to the immobilizer on that antenna ring, which is normally around the ignition on keyed ignitions. That can vary for smart keys, so just keep that in mind. Once we've cycled the ignition on, I recommend maybe give it a couple seconds, but it should calculate that data pretty quick. I've also learned if it does not do that, you might just want to cycle it off and back on with that antenna close to there. So I'll put the camera down while I cycle the ignition on, and then I'll pick it back up, and yeah, it timed out there. So I'll hit retry, cycle the ignition on, pick the camera back up, and we'll show you what it's doing. So I'll hit retry, turn ignition on, and now we're back to our acquiring data screen. I'm going to let it sit for a couple seconds, but I'm already probably going to have to cycle this ignition again. So yeah, make your own judgment call, but I'm going to go ahead and just put the camera down another second, cycle that ignition off and on again. And there we go. So it's calculating. Now it's queuing the data so we can copy that to a transponder. At this point, you're good to remove it from the ignition itself. You could probably turn your car off too, just not drain the battery. And then depending on your internet, the device, and all the other variables there, it might take a moment to queue this data, and then you'll be able to clone your chip. So I'll show you in real time how long that's going to take, and then we'll get this transponder cloned. Now, just while we wait for this data, you know, my opinion on this is it's a very helpful function. If I would say so myself, your X-Horse key tool is tried and true. I clone many transponders and have not had any issues with most of them. Any issues I'm talking about, it's not like they last and then they don't. This would just be like from the get-go they won't work, depending on what chip type, what car. The queuing data takes a lot longer than some of them, but it's just part of it. If you do this with the X-Horse, it'll be very familiar to you. So we should have our calculation here. We'll go ahead and hit OK. Calculation has been performed successfully. Place the original key in the slot. So we're talking about our working car key. And then we're going to go ahead and put that back in the slot. Hit OK. And we'll probably need some more data. Take out the original key, place a AT100 transponder, and hit next. So we'll remove our original key. We have our AT100 transponder. We'll put in this little receptacle, and then we'll hit OK. Keep the transponder clone stable and wait for the cloning to be completed. Then we get a message that says the cloning is completed, and we can hit continue. Now, like the X-Horse, when you hit continue, it seems to just do the cloning over again. Maybe in essence, if you're doing many keys, save you some steps there. So once it's at this screen, you could hit completed, and I think that'll back it out. Yeah. So we'll just say we're done. Now we're going to take our chip and we're going to put it in our key shell chip holder. And then we will turn on the vehicle to show you that it works. Alright, so we've placed our transponder in the pocket for the key shell. I'm going to just demonstrate this real quick. It doesn't have a chip, but just for the sake of the demonstration. This is the key without the chip. We'll notice that this key light will be blinking. Means that the key's not programmed or a non-programmed key's in there and the ignition's not going to start. So we'll take this, we're going to put that in our key here, and then we'll fire up the vehicle. Alright, so we put our chip in the pocket there. Probably push that down a bit. But what we'll do here is demonstrate that the key no longer displays our theft light. Goes right out. We can fire up our ignition there. Alright you guys, well that's how we use the new Autel At100 clonable transponder. Just to clarify again, we can use that transponder on any Autel immobilizer device. For today's example, we're using the KM100. Another key point of these is, let's say you didn't hand that key over to a customer, you know, you want to reuse the chip. You don't actually have to reset these or clear any data. They're completely reusable. What we would do is we would just take the chip out, chip that's already used, we put it back in the receptacle there, and when we have a new key to clone, it'll write over the data just like that. I've said in many videos, cloning is a preference of mine when available. There's less risk involved, no hooking up to a vehicle. We can always make sure a customer gets a key, even if their vehicle's not running or not operational. So it's a good thing to know. It's a good thing to use when available. And if I have to say so myself, I'm still a little bit of a bigger fan of the X-Horse stuff right now. Just more versatile, more functionality, but they've also been out a lot longer. I am excited to see what Autel is capable of doing in the future with this. I know they're under some heat, especially with the KM100s. So the fact that they got this out to us, I'm pretty stoked about all that, and we'll see what the future brings. Now, for one of my next videos, I will show how to generate a AT100 to a blank specific chip. So for example, the ID46 for the Hondas, we can generate this as a ID46 and then hard program that with a programming device into the vehicle. So that's a helpful thing to know. We'll go ahead and demonstrate that in another video. Thank you.